I love quotes, and if there's one thing I'm good at, it's actually misreading quotes and extending their meaning to different topics and fields in order to, let's say, broaden my approach to something. In 101 Things I Learned, or 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School, Matthew Frederick shares diverse insight he got from architectural school. One idea that stuck with me and that will be relevant for us in this perception diamond and that will help us bridging the world of architecture and visualization is his idea that our experience of an architectural space is strongly influenced by how we arrive in it. There's actually a lot to say with such a simple quote, both on the first meaning of it and on the sort of like extended meaning I'm drawing from it. So if we stick to architecture first, this can sound like it goes without saying, but like anything that goes without saying, once you start thinking about it, it actually is, there's a bit more there, that there are many ideas that can stem from it. It is indeed logical that our experience of a space is partly defined by how we arrive in it. What this means for us is that the perception of a space is not dependent of the space itself, but also of how we arrive in it and how the space before was. This will lead us to talk about the concept of contrast a bit later on. We can imagine many ways to enter an architectural space. You can have a huge door and no deep threshold, and the architecture is in your face. You can have a very long corridor that leads to the final space. This corridor can be of many different dimensions, can have different amount of lights, and this transition will actually have an impact on how we perceive the space we arrive in, how much we like it, how we feel in it, if we feel like staying or if we just want to leave. Now, this is already interesting for us because our job is to depict space in a way that is, well, ideally true to how we'll experience the space in the real world if the project gets built. So understanding how we physically experience space is actually valuable information. Now on to the visualization aspect. I like the idea that entering an architectural space is just like entering an image, because what I was mentioning for the architectural space is basically based on perception, how we perceive the space, how we feel in it, how we transition, how the transition impacts our perception of the space, etc. And entering an image, or let's say less poetically, looking at an image is also based on perception, how shapes relate to one another and how they grab our attention, how they contrast with the rest of the image or even the rest of the room we're sitting in. Why does this matter? Because the perception principles at play are actually exactly the same. So understanding how the space has been designed and how it plays with perception to make the space how it is can actually inform our composition on how we make our image and help it translate this very perception into imagery. Because it goes without saying that what you want to avoid is for the perception of your image to not match the perception of how the space will be in real life. And all this actually comes down in great part to how we enter the space or enter the image. It all comes down to how we mindfully leverage the fundamentals of perception in order to make sure that the experience of the final viewer is how we want it to be in terms of perception. So let's keep digging the topic of perception in order to broaden our understanding of it and how it can impact our composition decisions.